We are now joined by Fernando Pernica from Nefta. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you, James. How are you?
Very well. We've done day two. We've had the party last night. Did you go to any of the parties around the town? Or
We tried. We was very, very busy. We did find some bars near the event, and we had a few beverages to celebrate the first day.
GDC is all about there being no space anywhere.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
surprised you found anything. I know I have talked to Nefta in the past, not yourself specifically, but if people haven't heard of the company, just give them the little rundown. What do you do?
Of course, yeah. So we are essentially a fully fledged ad network. And what differentiates us from other partners out there is that we are leveraging first-party publisher data in order to serve more relevant ads for players. So we know that, of course, the industry has seen a huge shift towards privacy. That meant signal loss for advertisers, which led to rising costs for developers, and of course, a certain loss of accuracy on building the right game for the right audiences. We are trying to bridge that gap by helping advertisers find the right audiences again. And once they find the right audiences, we believe that they will then be willing to invest more in our network and invest more in those users. And that means that publishers can then generate more ad revenue when they're monetizing with us as well.
How tough is it to do more with less data? Because obviously all those lockdowns are tricky, and with Apple closing its doors a little bit, and it does mean that you have much less access to this stuff. So how do you maximize what you do have access to?
It's a great question. I think the right answer would be we're not actually doing more with less data. We're doing more with different data. So far, the industry has really focused on using advertiser-focused IDs. Gathering data from across the web that shows a profile of this user across many sites. Of course, that's not possible in the more mobile because Apple is clamping down and Google will follow suit. What we're doing is actually looking at publisher data. How can behavior within a game actually inform advertising and better advertising options? So that's what we're looking at. And we're looking at a lot more data points than before because we want to understand how a player behaves within the game and how that behavior can then lead to conversion for our advertisers.
Speaking of player behavior, we've got a Unity report, they've just released their 2024 one, saying that the retention rates and the IAP purchases are down, but app revenue is up, nearly 27%. So it seems to be that money is being made, but there are these negative metrics that have kicked in for the first time really in history of the industry. The last 2 years has not been super great. How does that impact what you folks do?
Great question. I think what we're seeing really, it's a bit of the effect of the trends of the last 2 years. So developers have spent a lot of time, building games without a lot of information on what kind of users they can acquire. Right, that has a massive impact. It could be that they are buying lower quality users now because they don't have access to high quality users, and perhaps they are going on a shopping spree and acquiring users for a lower cost. That means that they retain at a lower level. But at the same time, because they are being so aggressive on acquisition, on sort of one size fits all potentially, they are able to generate more revenue. But it's long term is going to be a very hard strategy to follow, because they won't be able to optimize those users long term. And in order to build a game that people will come and play over and over again, it's becoming harder and harder. And that's why they're resorting to potentially an approach where they need to reach more users. And of course, that has a lot of implications for costs as well. So yes, revenue might be up, but we haven't actually looked at the cost numbers for developers on the other side.
The cost numbers, you mentioned that. We've been looking at the liftoff reports that they've put out, and they say that the CPI for video ads on Android is about 80 cents, whereas the CPI over on Apple is over $5.
Yeah.
So there is a shocking difference in trying to get that install on the different platforms. Is it a case of is it now very expensive just to get anybody on board on Apple at all on the iOS platform? Or is it a case of what you're talking about there with the quality of the user and the potential revenue you can get for them? Is there a higher quality user over there on Apple?
So I would say that advertisers are going in blind in their acquisition campaigns. And that, of course, that's a price to pay, right? You're trying different strategies, you're trying different users, you're not really getting the return on investment. But everyone's doing the same. And that has a huge cost for the industry. Now, if advertisers had a way to find out who their best users are in the publisher sites, then perhaps they can do better, make better decisions on their campaigns. But right now they don't have it. As I mentioned, it's a bit of a machine gun approach where they're just trying everything they can. And iOS was always historically more expensive, but now it's we're going to historic levels of those CPIs, and that is very challenging. It's going to be even more challenging for the industry, right? So yes, the revenue is going up, but retention is down, and publishers have to spend more money on iOS.
Got you. Well, we can't not talk about AI because everyone's been talking about it for the past year. As I say to everybody in this situation, you're a company that's been using machine learning, I'm sure, for many, many years, but the generative AI is affecting people's workflows these days. And the word I keep hearing is inevitable in terms of being introduced into the cycle. What do you feel are the benefits, strengths of it? Are you kind of pro this sort of thing, or what do you feel?
Well, whether I am pro or not, I think it's irrelevant. I think it's how can we best leverage this technology for our business, for example. I don't think we're there yet, we're still relying on maybe old school AI, where it's how to use machine learning models. But it could be very interesting in the future and very relevant for the way we work, because of course we're dealing in vast amounts of publisher data. They're sending us events that would inform us about how players behave within the game. And if we can perhaps teach the AI to essentially create the models based on that and teach itself, then performance improvements will be much greater than they are now, for advertisers and for publishers as well. So I think generative AI, in the sense of is generating new ways to look at the data. This could be very exciting for us. Now, on an industry and to perhaps even a personal level, I think we're in a very exciting point. 2024, I think, is going to be a consumer. It is very consumer driven. Right now we've seen how professionals can use Gen AI to help their work. But more and more companies are putting this in the hands of people. We have, Microsoft very much, pushing their apps, about high ratings on Google Play, for example. That means that people love it, people are using it. My phone comes with, generative AI tools already that I've already used a few times. So consumers are getting their hands on it, and now we're finally going to start to see what this means for the world. So far it's been only people that understand technology that are actually using it. But tomorrow is going to be my mom using this stuff. And what does that mean for us? What the opportunities and the challenges that are going to arise from that as well.
What about other trends that affect your industry specifically? AI's taken up a lot of oxygen and people get excited about it because it's a very broad conversation now. Within your specific space, is there anything that's popped up over the last couple of years that's really changed the way that you do business, or something that you see on the horizon that's going to affect the way that you work?
Yeah, I think the most telling change really has been on how game developers are using it. This is not something specific to advertising, but it's very exciting to see how so many studios are embracing it. And the most exciting aspects, I think, is those studios that are actually trying to be AI first. I haven't really seen a breakout studio. There's a couple of really interesting players out there that I'm following, but I'm really looking forward to see a game that has been developed entirely not by AI, but entirely helped by AI. Reach the top 10, on Apple and Google. I think that'll be a really exciting time. On the advertising side of things, and what I mentioned to you before, being able to make better predictions and be able to learn from the previous campaigns and the previous publishers that we've had, I think that would be a really huge breakout for us to be able to achieve that. And this is what we're working towards, really, to create a system that feeds itself and teaches itself to improve campaign performance, to improve publisher CPMs as well.
Well, you've set up your booth here at the event, and you've been talking to people face to face. From your perspective, what's the difference in doing these kind of interactions at a show versus, Zoom or Skype or a phone call? Why do you come to these kind of things?
Yeah, the difference is water and wine. We can achieve so much more, even if it's just a handshake or touching base with people here that you've been talking to perhaps for many months. Just having that. Be able to look in the eye, being able to sort of exchange a few pleasantries and perhaps, share a drink or share a coffee. I think that really cements something in the relationship and it helps to move things forward, And sometimes when you're having a call over Zoom and, we might have all the time in the world, but just getting the right moment to say the right things can really be a balancing act. Here in person, you can diffuse the situation, you can build on something, you can pace yourself much, much better. And I think that really helps us accelerate our progress, which is why we're coming to this event. We've attended a few, and we're very happy to be in the debut of PGC here in San Francisco. So it's really exciting to support the industry and moving this forward and keeping this alive.
Well, we're very glad to have you here, and thank you for talking to us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.